A non-devotee, heen, cha, they're not good. Krishna bhajana, and according to Krishna, when dealing with Krishna service, you don't consider jati, their birth, kuladi, or their family, bicha, none of these things. But so we're not considering those things in a detrimental way. They're not good. Okay, we're not considering these things in a detrimental way. There was a devotee named Shubhananda who wrote a book called Hare Krishna, which included interviews with Srivastava Goswami, who at that time was the head of the Radharaman temple in Vrindavan, who is a Vaishnava in the Gaudiya sect. And he was talking about how there's American Vaishnavas and Australian Vaishnavas and things like that. So when I first thought about it, I thought, oh, this is he's discriminating between these different type of Vaishnavas. That's very good. But then I realized he's not doing it in a critical way. He's doing it in a positive way to enhance our understanding of Krishna consciousness. So it's okay to differentiate in that way. So in that sense, we're going to hear from Vishaka about her development in Krishna consciousness in association with Srila Prabhupada for our positive edification from her point of view. Does that make sense? Not in a critical way. We're not saying that. And an interesting point is that she started out as an atheist, which she'll say. So you'll see that. So are we ready to play the brief introduction?
Yeah, wherever you.
Yes, you can play now.
Video, which was
Hare Krishna, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhya cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha. I offer my humble obeisances to all of you. All glories to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Vishnu Gada Prabhu sent me a couple of questions that I wanted to try to respond to. The first one is, what importance do you think there might be for hearing about and understanding Prabhupada's activities and interactions with devotees, especially the followers of ISKCON? So I feel it's of vital importance that the followers of ISKCON hear about and understand Prabhupada's activities and his interactions with his followers. And this is because Prabhupada's teachings are vast. Practically, he's created a whole library of books, and we have literally hundreds of his transcribed lectures and 5,000 letters that he's written. So one can only wonder, how can this vast body of material translate into the character and values and activities of one person, an unalloyed devotee of Krishna. And by seeing Prabhupada through the eyes of his followers, we can get some idea of the answers to this important question, and in that way, learn how to apply these invaluable teachings in our own lives. Another question Vishnu Gada Prabhu sent was, what factors contributed to me deciding to write this book, 5 years, 11 months, and a lifetime of unexpected love? So I mentioned in the book's acknowledgments that many years ago, a devotee asked me the question, what was it actually like to be with Srila Prabhupada? So I wrote the book. It took me a long time to write it, but I wrote it in an attempt to answer that question. Also, I wanted to understand how I, a former atheist, became a theist. Coming to theism from my background was a 180-degree change for me, and I wanted to trace that transformation and try to understand how it came about. And also, as all stories are, my story is unique, and I wanted to articulate it as best I could, both for myself and for anyone who might be interested. So thank you all very much for taking the time to read this book. I really hope that you enjoy it, and I especially hope that it helps you come closer to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpa.
Yeah, yeah. Nice introduction. Huh?
Thank you, Vishnugara Prabhu, for having her. Arrange for her to speak a little bit about it.
Yeah. So I know Mother Vishaka, or she calls Vishaka Prabhu from New York, and the first class I gave in New York, she asked me all the questions and put me on the spot. So I remember that too. So we'll start reading and as usual, if you have questions or comments when we're coming through, you certainly feel free. I know this format of being on the Zoom might dampen that, but things become more interesting and relevant if something comes up and it needs clarification or you'd like further talk on a certain point, then don't hesitate to bring it up. Okay, so I'm going to start. Some of you don't have books yet, and I'll bring the box again. I've been bringing it on Sunday, but I wasn't there last Sunday. But I'll bring the box of books again on this Sunday. And if you didn't get a book already, or if I need to give books, then you could please collect them at that time. Okay, all right. So I'm going to start from the prologue. Those of you who don't have books, and those of you who have books, I'm sorry. And I'm going to read a little slower since some of you don't have books. Okay. This is Prologue, April 1971. The elderly Indian guru considered our question with what seemed to be equal parts gravity and amusement. You do not speak the language, he said. Wherever you go, they will simply cheat you and steal your cameras. Is that true? At least at that time. His unique candor, far from what I'd expected or wanted, set the stage for a skeptical heart to stumble upon unexpected love. My friend John and I were standing in the spotless master bedroom of an apartment on the 7th floor of the Akash Ganga building, one of Bombay's many high-rises. Outside, the sun blazed on morning traffic plying and honking along city thoroughfares while seagulls cruised overhead, calling. Inside, the walls, ceiling, and curtains were a creamy white. White sheets covered wall-to-wall cotton floor mats. Do they do that in South India as well? Do they make these bolster pillows and cover things in sheets? Do they do that? You don't know? Everybody has
Bolster pillows, yes, but we usually don't cover with white sheets. There are chapel, there are bamboo mats that are made. They use those.
Okay.
Or thick blankets.
Okay. In northern India, they do this. I know when you go to, I'm sure some of you have been to Vrindavan, in those shops in the bazaar in Vrindavan, they all have these kind of bolster things with sheets on them.
They have carpet, then they will do.
Oh, carpet also, okay.
Because they want to keep it clean, the carpet. That's why.
Yes, yes. So they can wash the sheets.
Wash
Yeah,
the sheet.
yeah, yeah. The room's two large windows, one overlooking the Arabian Sea to the west, the other facing a long stretch of beachfront high rises to the south, were open, and a sea breeze billowed their gossamer curtains. The room's quiet ambiance, infused with the airy freshness and exultation of the ocean, was full of expectancy and possibilities. The only furniture was a rectangular coffee table. The guru, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, sat behind it, cross-legged, on a mattress covered with a white cotton sheet. He relaxed against two large white bolsters stacked on top of each other to the wall, next to the wall. On either side of him were similar bolsters, together making a U-shaped seat. Due to the heat, it's in April. Besides his wraparound dhoti, Prabhupada wore only a saffron cloth knotted over his right shoulder and falling under his left arm, leaving his left shoulder and part of his chest bare, a traditional style for a renunciant. I was wearing my customary thin blouse and slacks. Interesting point here is that when they were staying at the Akash Ganga building, Yamuna Devi was there, who was one of Srila Prabhupada's early disciples, who joined in San Francisco, and they had a room for the ladies ashram and the men's ashram separate. So one time somebody walked in with pants on, and she became really disturbed, and she said, "Oh, she thought a guy had come." But you know who it was? Any guesses? Huh?
Vishaka Devi?
That was Vishaka. Yeah. Because she was, all of the ladies were always wearing saris, right? But so Vishaka was, she was a Western person coming in pants. Okay. John and I were photography students at Rochester Institute of Technology. Are you familiar with this university, Shobharate?
My cousin's husband retired there as a professor.
Yes. In Rochester, New York. He a graduate, I an undergraduate. We'd set our hearts on creating a National Geographic style photographic essay of a quaint Indian village, showing how villagers live without the complexity and stress typical of Western life. We envisioned lithe and healthy farmers guiding oxen that strained to pull crude wooden plows through fertile fields, lovely women weaving colorful cotton cloth on looms, organic stone ground flour, pure well water, live dramatic performances under starlit skies, and in general, an aesthetic, happy, technology-free life. So is that there in India?
Not anymore.
In the villages, yes.
Okay,
Villages still have that, I think,
to some extent, yes.
to some extent, yes.
The difficulty was that we were new to India. John had been here 5 months and I 5 weeks, and we didn't know which of the thousands of Indian villages would be most suited for our purpose. So we'd come to ask someone who'd lived and traveled extensively in India, the resident of the master bedroom, Prabhupada. As we placed our query before him, Prabhupada looked at us squarely and listened attentively. The time, the place, the circumstances under which the three of us were face to face in that room's buoyant light, the immediate prosperous career prospects that hung suspended on the words that would pass from him to us, the sense that our immediate and long-term future could be determined by the knowledgeable, cheerful gentleman who sat comfortably before us, whirled my thoughts. For some moments, Prabhupada considered our question: which is India's most photogenic village? And then replied with such a pin of realism that it instantly popped my bubble of idealism. Only a couple of weeks before, on one of the jammed Indian third-class trains, do they have those still?
No more third class.
No more third class?
Anymore, not anymore.
Okay. They were kind of fun, right?
Yeah. But that is a lot of crowd. Will be there.
Yeah, they sometimes they said anyway they would nickname them cattle cars
That's right.
because they're so crowded and
Dump
yeah.
them.
Yeah. Only a couple of weeks before on one of the jammed Indian third-class trains, John had been pickpocketed. What was I doing in this overpopulated, overheated, desperately poor, mismanaged, theft-riddled, very foreign country anyway? Angst churned in me as Prabhupada continued. Best that you go to Vrindavan and do your story there. Vrindavan, an unusual sounding name I'd never heard before. Little did I envision this modest historic town as a Waterloo for all my youthful schemes. A town, do you know what Waterloo is? What Waterloo is? What is Waterloo? Come on. You don't know Waterloo?
Like Waterloo, Canada?
No.
There was a battle of Waterloo.
Yeah. Waterloo was where Napoleon got his ultimate defeat. Napoleon had he had designs on conquering England and he had conquered many parts of Europe. But when an English expression is he met his Waterloo, means he met his ultimate defeat. So here, the idea is, little did I envision this modest historic town as a Waterloo for all my youthful schemes, a town that would change my life, create its whole purpose afresh, its hopes and fears, its struggles, its interests, and its sacrifices all turned forever to a new direction. This unseen possibility would later become as clear as the dazzling sun behind those large windows. Okay. Questions, comments?
That was it. He just said, they didn't talk anymore.
I don't know.
At that first meeting.
I don't know. I think she revisits this later in the book. There'll be an introduction here where we start out with her early life, which is before she met devotees. So it may be revisited later. But they were you're asking him a question, and if you ask a question, do you want the answer? Okay. And they did go to Vrindavan. They did.
So, but how did they, maybe she will talk about this later on, but how did they end up at Akash Ganga? I mean, why did they go to Srila Prabhupada with that?
Oh, okay. That'll be described. That'll be described. Good point. Good point. That's going to be described in the first few chapters. So, you know, the author of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, his name is, you know his name?
Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami.
Yes, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. He was living in his family home, and his brother was living there also. But then one day, and he was a follower of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. And one day, one of the great devotees of Lord Nityananda appeared in an assembly there. They were having some kind of gathering. And everybody offered some respects, but the pujari who was doing the deity worship, he neglected to offer respect. So that devotee was named Miniketan Ramdas. So Miniketan Ramdas, he became offended. Although ordinarily, you know, devotees don't want respect. But anyway, he became disturbed and he broke his flute and left. So Krishnadas Kaviraj could understand the reason the pujari didn't offer respect to Miniketan Ramdas was because his brother, who had employed this pujari, was against Lord Nityananda. Although he embraced and appreciated Lord Chaitanya, he didn't appreciate Lord Nityananda at all. So he said this was really half a hen philosophy. You know the philosophy of half a hen? Do you know that philosophy?
Yes.
All or nothing, go in.
Yeah. So there's a farmer. The farmer has a hen, and he's a very intelligent farmer. So he says, you know, there's two parts of the hen. The back part of the hen is very good because it gives the eggs, but the front part of the hen with the beak is problem because it's always eating grains and I have to feed it. So if I just cut off the front part and keep the back part, then I'll be the gainer, right? Right? I take the back half and get rid of the front half. So what happens as a result?
It's dead.
Well, you get nothing. You get zero because the hen is destroyed. So the Krishnadas Kaviraj said that's the philosophy of rejecting Lord Nityananda but accepting Lord Chaitanya. So anyway, that night in a dream, Lord Nityananda appeared to him with his associates and told Krishnadas Kaviraj, now you should leave this place and go to Vrindavan, because in Vrindavan you will achieve all things. So it's this little similarity, not complete similarity, a little similarity to this. Go to Vrindavan. In the United States, they have this saying during the late 1800s, go west, young man. You remember that? Anybody? Dronacharya remembers. Go west, young man. So we don't say that, go west. We say, go to Vrindavan. Either physically or at least within your heart. Chapter 1, Boots and a Kodak Brownie. Are you ready? You ready? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great Neck, a 2-mile wide, 4-mile long peninsula that juts north into the placid Long Island Sound. A backdrop for F. Scott Fitzgerald famed The Great Gatsby, the residence of magnate giants like Walter P. Chrysler, renowned entertainers like the Marx Brothers, and well-to-do Jewish families escaping the New York City congestion, was home for my parents, brothers, and me. Do you know where Long Island is?
Kind of near New York City.
Yeah. And if one is from Long Island, they sometimes say Long Island. but it's part of the state of New York, but it's an island. Brooklyn is on that, the westernmost part of that island, and Queens is on the westernmost part of that island. And it juts out into the ocean. Above is the northern part is Long Island Sound. And there's the north shore of Long Island and the south shore of Long Island. The north shore of Long Island is where the rich people live. And the south shore of Long Island is where the working class live. Just so you know, this is some. So apparently, or not just the rich people, but wealthier and a little more exclusive people live on the North Shore. So Great Neck is part of the North Shore. So that means that the parents must have had some means for sure. Okay. We lived in the Windsor, an expansive, tall, drab, rent-controlled brick apartment building that had the architectural flair of a cement block. When I was small, my dad's fur business was flourishing. See, they had means, even though they're living in this apartment building. Our Pontiac was new. Mom had new mink and sable coats and valuable jewelry. See, these are not very devotional items, as you can imagine. And Beatrice was our full-time nanny. In India, perhaps you have, that's more common to have nannies or servants. In the United States, it's very rare for that to happen, at least at that time. Yeah. I used to watch as Mom prepared for the posh shows and dinners she and Dad went to. She'd sit before her three-sided mirror and apply a little makeup, especially her fire engine red lipstick, with a cultured woman's innate sense of how to make men's eyes turn in respect rather than covetousness. Dad was proud of her. My parents could have bought an upscale Great Neck house with its own yard and German shepherd, but Mom, sensing coming troubles, wanted us to stay put. Our apartment, she said, was centrally located, easy to heat and clean, saved money, and best of all for me, was directly across the street from Grace Avenue Park. To a passerby, Grace Avenue Park was hardly noteworthy. A fenced-in open grassy square taking up half a suburban block. It boasted a slight hill leading up to its east fence, two separate playgrounds, on the north side for toddlers and the west side for youth, some wood planked park benches scattered here and there, a paved walkway running through it diagonally, and towards its center, a shallow cement kiddie pool, small enough to be confused for an oversized bird bath. But my beloved Grace Avenue Park, the most unutterably fine and enchantingly graced place the world had ever known, boasted acres of open meadows, vales and hills for romping, magnificent sand, slides, swings, and seesaws to share and fight over with friends, colossal trees to climb, bugs, birds, and bushes to investigate, ever so many adults to wonder at, and a stern park custodian to tease. This glorious park encompassed my delightfully complete universe. The park pool was my swamp, and I was its alligator, quickly dashing at and encircling unsuspecting victims, stopping at nothing and for no one until a piercing whistle obliged all waiters and an alligator to stand aside for 5 horribly long, dripping, goosebumpy minutes while an attendant added chlorine to the water. Do they have those breaks in swimming pools here?
Have what?
Breaks. Usually, most of the public swimming pools, they have a period where everybody has to get out of the water for 10 minutes or 5 minutes. No? No?
That's now with the COVID.
Yeah, now in the COVID is a completely different thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to do maintenance. Sometimes they do it just
Yeah.
to clean everything out. Sometimes they have to test the water. They have to make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we dashed in again, but now I was a deep sea explorer with full scuba regalia, searching for treasures at unfathomable depths. In the fall, the fat-limbed oaks that arched over the playground were drenched in crimson gold leaves that gusts sent spinning to the ground, falling in free-flowing flocks like exhausted ballerinas. The air had a tang, the cold of the stainless steel slide 14 steps up. It was like mountain climbing, pierced my pants, and the coolness of the sand under the swings pressed through my sneakers. As I pumped the swing upward, my eyes smarting from bracing gusts, a crimson canopy danced around me. At the end of one typically long park-filled day, Mom kissed me goodnight and was about to leave my room when I asked, "What will happen to me when I die, after I die?" I'd never asked such a question before, but after seeing a stirring black and white photograph of an immense rolling graveyard vanishing into the somber Manhattan skyline, it popped out. Did any of you ask those questions when you were a kid?
Yes.
Did you? Yeah. What answer did you get?
What happens to you when you die?
Yeah.
You go to heaven.
Oh, they said that? Okay. Everybody? Everybody?
I don't remember them really making much of a distinction. I think I just asked what happens to me when I die. You know, later on I would ask questions. I forget the answers to them when I start thinking a little bit more about it. You know, what about, start learning about stuff in Bible school and things like that. What about the Jewish people that don't accept Jesus, and what happens to them? But yeah, the answer I got when I was young when I'd ask that question was, you go to heaven.
Okay. Anybody else?
I got no
Yeah,
idea.
I was told that Jewish people go to heaven and everybody else doesn't.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Jews are the only ones.
Congratulations.
Yeah, interesting, huh?
I remember asking the question, but my parents really didn't want to talk about it.
I did.
That was just not something they wanted to talk about. So
Yeah.
one time my older sister had some kind of operation where it was kind of serious, and I said, "Well, gosh, she might have to die," and she said, "Don't talk about that. What happens? I don't know." So,
Yeah.
okay.
Was told you're born again, but then I would ask, okay, so you're born again, and then what? You die again. Okay, you're born again and you die again. Then where does it end? What is the purpose? I would never get that answer.
Okay, so your parents knew about reincarnation and stuff, but beyond that, it wasn't very clear. Yeah.
Later, my parents got into this.
Yeah. So there's a big, when you go to Long Island from New York on the Long Island Expressway, is that Sangeeta there?
Yes,
Have you ever driven out to Long Island on the Long Island Expressway?
yes.
You'll see on the left side, you pass this gigantic cemetery. Do you
Hmm.
remember that?
No.
Yeah,
Mhm.
anyway, it wouldn't be surprising if that's because Long Island Expressway is the northern part, goes to northern Long Island. So it wouldn't be surprised if that's the pictures he saw. Gigantic cemetery.
I don't remember.
Okay. Mom was surprised. Then a look that said, "Why don't you ask me the color of vanilla ice cream?" swept her angular face. Nothing happens. You're buried or cremated. That's it, she said. That was not an adequate answer. There has to be more to it than that, I said. Upset with Mom for being an ununderstandable, and from under the covers kicked a box of tissues that was at the foot of the bed, sending it sailing to Mom's feet. Mom glanced at the box, gave her insolent 10-year-old a "what's your problem" look, turned out the light and left the room, closing the door behind her and leaving her daughter securely tucked into wrinkle-free, floral patterned polyester sheets, along with her unanswered pivotal question. So the meta communication here is don't ask the question, right? Means meta communication means you don't say it with your words, but by your activities or the circumstances surrounding what you communicate, it answers, it gives you there's some answer given. Don't ask that question. At that moment, life seemed flimsy and imperiled by emptiness. But by morning, my question no longer seemed relevant, and over the ensuing years, death's aftermath seemed more and more ungraspable, like the vanishing point of railway tracks. Questions, comments? Okay. As I was growing up, each year before the first day of school, Mom and I would drive to personable, inviting downtown Great Neck. She'd park our olive green Pontiac in front of Abe's Bakery. I'd get out and inhale the luscious smells of freshly baked bread as Mom came around from the driver's side and joined me, enclosing my hand firmly yet kindly in hers. We'd cross the 2-lane Middle Neck Road, squeeze between parked cars on the opposite side, walk past the pungent smells of Homer's Deli, past fashionable Betsy's Boutique, popular Liz's Hair Salon, dependable Irving's Hardware, and onto Brown's Shoes. So this is a giving example. This is really, she's coming from a slice of America background. You follow? You know, sometimes people think the individuals who join the Hare Krishna movement, there's some kind of odd background that they must have been coming from to participate in such an odd idea, especially if you're come from America. So here, she's giving her quite detailed description of her American bona fides. Do you follow? Yeah. Shelves of children's shoes and youth footwear line glass display windows at the store entrance. Inside, Stuart Brown, an affable man with anxious eyes, greeted us by name. It always seemed he'd been waiting for us. Mr. Brown knew our footwear preferences: practical, comfortable, hardy, earth-colored. not too fancy, it looks like, not too fashionable. His white shirt gleamed under the lights, and in moments he'd measured my small feet, length and width, pressing them firmly against his specialized foot measuring device and remarking on their growth. Do you have those devices in India?
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, yeah. Mr. Brown would disappear into the back and then emerge with an assortment of boxes of shoes for me to try. Opening a likely box, he'd remove the new shoe from its tissue wrapping and in one smooth whip out a shiny steel shoehorn from his back pocket, place it in the heel of the shoe, and ease my foot effortlessly into it, casually returning the shoehorn to his back pocket as, with his other hand, he assuredly squeezed the sides of the shoe, checking its width against my foot, and then pressing the tip to see where my toes came. Once the second shoe was on, I'd caper around his small store, feeling special, unable to take my eyes off those sparkling, ever so fine shoes. They feel, their look, their sheer smell and newness made me euphoric. My mother, hardly speaking, would watch this procedure closely. When she was satisfied with the choice, she'd pay, exchange pleasantries with Mr. Brown, and we were on the street again. My year-old outgrown battered shoes in a bag swinging from my wrist, destined for the thrift store where Mom volunteered every Thursday, the profits going to the local hospital. Mom strode along, head held high, not looking down at me, but exchanging courtesies with acquaintances as we went. If she stopped to chat, I could wait patiently, gazing with contented joy at my new acquisitions, basking in their secure embrace, in the palpable satisfaction of having them, in being sheltered by my mother's care. I was ready to play hopscotch on the clouds. Who has a book who will read next? Or are the questions or comments? Okay. Anyone like to read next?
Kavita, would you like to read?
I'll read.
No, thank you. My book doesn't have page numbers. I have Jonova's book and it has no page numbers. Is that a rare one or does everybody's have not have page numbers?
Oh,
We have
mine-
page numbers.
Yeah, page numbers.
Yeah, mine doesn't. Jagannath Priya gave it to me. It was Jonova's copy. She brought it over last night and it has no numbers. Very strange.
Do you want to read anyway? Because you know
No.
where we are. Huh?
No, that's okay. Not tonight, please. I just
Okay,
got
no
off
problem.
a meeting with Toronto.
Okay.
I'll
You were
just
talking
listen.
too long. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll listen.
Any other volunteers? How about Shobha? No?
Okay. No, I can read. Before my first day of high school, Mom and I went to Brown's shoe store as usual, where I got ankle-high, soft leather hiking boots with rounded toes, sturdy soles, thick stitching, and wide brown laces. Rugged and practical, they were meant for tramping out miles, for romping and roving, for protecting and supporting young adventurous feet. In school, under long fluorescent tubes in the morose, tunnel-like hallways lined with gray metal lockers that were always being banged shut or open, I noticed other girls wearing fairy-like summer flip-flops with dainty golden straps and pin soles. Some had flimsy ballerina-type silver booties, stylish smoky wisps that hardly existed. The girls' condemnation of me started with my clumsy boots and went up. My frowsy clothes, my plain hair, my lack of makeup, my expressions, my interests. Clearly, I wasn't one of them. Swift, scornful glances at me were promptly followed by superior young heads with Marilyn Monroe hairdos briskly tossing away as if to say no one should see such a dreadful sight. I was in a blizzard of contempt, outclassed and outcast. From day one, I stopped liking my new shoes. I began scrutinizing my clothes and pondering their unsuitableness. Within a short time, I realized that shoes, clothes, and hair aside, the very words I spoke weren't right. How was it that everyone but me said smart things? A dark cloud of poisonous gas gathered over my high school epoch. On the family front, Dad's business was starting to founder. To help pay the bills, Mom stopped volunteering at the thrift store and became a secretary in a dental office. My brother Tony, independent and rebellious, would get into arguments with Dad about his late nights out with his friends, sometimes resulting in Dad chasing him around the dining room table, Tony laughing. If from who I am now, I could have spoken to myself, a floundering and scorned girl, I'd have said, "You're miserable now, but don't worry." Brewing with a struggling need to protect myself, in school I adopted a stoic shell as thick and impervious as I could fake it. Bearing my classmates' semi-secret snide remarks, sometimes said just loud enough to hurt with a stony silence, I became passive, letting the situation determine events by adapting and subordinating myself to others and saying what I thought they wanted to hear, most often lies that corroded my self-respect. The situation was sometimes unbearable, but I knew it couldn't be changed. Any program of self-betterment was doomed. I was not about to become stylish and socially adept. Was it worth trying if I wouldn't succeed? And when I tried and failed, then what would become of whatever remnants remained of my self-esteem? Unforgiving doors of conformity had slammed shut. The drawbridge was up. I was a banished lone figure beyond the moat, looking up at impervious stone walls that blocked the sky, listening as gleeful, hearty sounds drifted out. Later, I understood the social struggle that dominated my classmates' lives. A preoccupation with being accepted caused a meanness that flowed not only to me, but between them as well. They'd abandon friendships unhelpful to their social progress, fawn before those higher in the scale, and have secret motives in almost every action. Competitiveness, selfishness, and class consciousness made them as sad and confused as I was. Fortunately, bitterness and resentment weren't part of my family heritage. My proper British mother harbored occasional disdain for the uncultured ways of Americans, and my work forever but tried to be cheerful father was disappointed in his business, but neither was rancorous. I accustomed myself to sitting in the back of the classroom and observing. The school building had only recently been carved out of acres of forest, and through large classroom windows, I'd often see, beneath immense drifting clouds, a lone rabbit munching the short grass on the slope leading from the forest edge to the building. The rabbit was speckled brown with a white belly and pricked ears and long black twitching whiskers. This building has displaced you and me both, I thought. You're vulnerable to predators, me to being left out. Yet the rabbit had advantages over me. It had ready-made and unconditionally acceptable footwear and clothes, And surely, whatever sounds it made were all right with its fellows. Surely it didn't live with endlessly critical peers. As the rabbit could retreat to a tangle of wild forest, so I also needed a sanctuary. Gradually, one emerged: photography. Aunt Ethel had given me a Kodak Brownie box camera when I was 7, and I began using it regularly. I became an avid recorder of tree roots, ducks, soccer games, buildings, boats, bicycle riders, my parents, the Great Neck population, developing and printing photographs in my bedroom cum darkroom. My fingers stank of photographic chemicals. The saga of the following year was interrupted by John F. Kennedy's assassination. A dumbfounded 13-year-old, I sat on my parents' bed staring at our black and white television. Lyndon Johnson, sworn in as president, the accused Lee Harvey Oswald, shot dead as I watched, so beyond belief it was surreal. Slender Jacqueline in her black dress, her black veil hardly hiding her face, puffy with shock and grief, the solemn leaden procession through Washington, D.C., with Charles de Gaulle towering over the 90 other world leaders who accompanied the flag-draped coffin. America was traumatized, and so was I. I was picketing for equal rights. We shall overcome someday, and protesting the Vietnam War, give peace a chance. Our family dinners were quiet now. The talker, Tony, had gone to Princeton. Even our Christmas get-togethers had a pall over them. Uncle Stephen had divorced Aunt Ruth. Half the family had sided with her, the other half with him, and both sides stopped speaking to each other. The future seemed horribly bleak and dangerous. In later years, I'd sometimes skip a day of school to catch the Long Island Railroad 727 with Dad. I'd be the youngest person on the packed train, surrounded by shoulder-to-shoulder suited business people, their heads swaying with the train's motion, absorbed in their precisely folded newspapers, hardly looking up during the 24-minute ride past suburbs and dusty trees. What did these people live for, I wondered. Around Great Neck on the weekends, I'd see them watching televised football, mowing their lawns, sipping drinks under their awnings, walking their poodles, driving with their families. They were coping and doing the needful, lost in a rational world. Did they ever consider shutting off the demands of normalcy to access their incomprehensible, momentous aliveness? What captured their hearts and made them insanely happy to exist? Would a deadening abyss of comfort and security also engulf me? Somehow, the cultural values and norms I'd grown up immersed in were not serving me well. Before 8 o'clock, after much thumping and rocking and quacking, Dad and I, along with thousands of other passengers, would be streaming out of Manhattan's Penn Station like sawdust spewing from a spinning blade. In a gray stone building 3 blocks away, Dad unlocked his tired 2-room office, Papert and Company. Soon Sandra, Dad's indispensable secretary, would sit at her desk in the large outer room. A little later, Murray and Sydney, Dad's 2 problematic salesmen, would be at desks near hers. Dad's private adjoining office overlooked grimy 32nd Street. I'd sit and wait with the worn tedium those rooms seemed built of until gigantic Willoughby's camera store, half a block away, opened. Then I'd shop for a new camera or camera accessories with my saved up babysitting money. It's just amazing that looks like she was 14 years then, and she was asking such questions. I know as a 10-year-old also, she asked where, I mean, I almost had the same kind of experience growing up, not being included and all that. I think most teenage girls go through that. But it's just amazing that she was so aware and so mature for her age, asking and thinking like the way she's thinking.
Yes.
It was also the times. I think we were exposed to a lot at that time, and we questioned a lot more than kids do now because of what was going on then.
Good
That's my-
point.
Yeah.
Good point.
In 10th grade, the first year of senior high, Lucy Rodriguez joined our class. Newly moved from Bogota, Lucy spoke only broken English. She was tiny, her head 2 inches below my chin, with straight auburn hair that fell below her waist, steady hazel eyes, an aquiline nose, and a buck-toothed smile. Lucy and I were both outcasts, and we became inseparable. Together, we bought a small, inexpensive styrofoam sailboat for long excursions in the Long Island Sound. Lucy had never met an atheist before, and as we skimmed over the rippling water, I explained what Lucretius had said centuries before. Had God designed the world, it would not be a world so frail and faulty as we see. The Black people in America are fervently religious, yet they've been suffering slavery, brutality, and discrimination for hundreds of years, and they're still suffering. Besides that, Catholics themselves, Bible followers, can be evil. Just look at the suffering the Crusades and Inquisition caused. The biblical stories are not facts, I told her. God is a myth. Otherwise, why doesn't he answer your prayers? Lucy's mother was suffering chronic leg pain, and Lucy sought relief through prayer. Do you think God doesn't care or he's impotent? No, it's not that. It's that he's imaginary. Everything there is, everything we see and experience is due to natural forces. Although my thoughts were neither well-informed nor systematic, they gave Lucy pause. With my long incoming bosom friend Lucy, I was not alone in the world, but could share my most secret delights. There was nothing to be overcome. We joined like pieces of a puzzle. She was such a joy that I wanted her for myself. When she befriended Ziona, my neighbor in the Windsor apartment building, I was overcome with envy. Although Ziona and I spent time together in school and at home when her mother wasn't around, now I stopped speaking to her, thinking Lucy would do the same. Naturally, Ziona was hurt, and kind-hearted Lucy spent more time than ever with her. I was too proud to apologize and explain myself. What wanton, wicked tyranny made me shun Ziona, a person I liked? Why was I giving Ziona the same pain of exclusion that had devastated me? I was no better than my snotty torturers. I betrayed myself. For the first time in my life, I felt the full force of regret and sent a private wail of shame and guilt to the sky. My God, how could I? 2 months before I graduated, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. The month I graduated, Robert Kennedy was assassinated. The image of him lying on his back, neck tense, head raised, arms stretched above his head, fists clenched, remained chiseled in my mind. My existence in a placid, well-placed suburb was punctuated by the staccato of upheaval and pain, my own mortified feelings, life's hollowness, looming sudden death. Every one of us, it seemed, was constantly undercut by our physicality and life's fickleness. We were all subject to an unpredictable jumble of circumstance, choice, and fate. Not knowing what else to do, in September, I was off to college. I decided to major in photography. The greats in that field, Ansel Adams, Margaret Bourke-White, Alfred Stieglitz, had vision and values that inspired me. I'd applied to the photojournalism department at Rochester Institute of Technology in Rochester, the home of Kodak, and was admitted with a generous scholarship. Mom and Dad drove me to the campus in upstate New York. When the three of us walked into my dorm room, I noticed both my roommates, tender and talented Tina Spruce and quick-witted Stacy Bryant, had ankle-high, soft leather hiking boots with rounded toes, sturdy soles, thick stitching, and white brown laces. Incredible. After 6 years of smears due, at least in part, to that same footwear, I thought, I can be myself here. Beaming, I hugged my parents goodbye and said, don't worry about me, I'll be fine. But I wasn't. Within a week, I was crying at my desk over monstrous technical tomes on filters, focal length and light waves, refraction and diffusion, aperture, shutter speeds, and chemical sensitivity to light. I'd sit before onerous charts and diagrams while mentally reviewing the steps that had brought me to this place. Where had I gone wrong? At what point should I have made a different decision? Each time I plodded through the various choices I'd made over the past months and years, I wound up in that room in front of those books. I was meant to be doing just what I was doing. I loved photography, and this was the place to learn it. I'd sigh deeply and go on studying. In a mandatory writing course, I had a chance to vent. To endure the gross, inflexible monotony of high school life, most students enter and maintain a state of limbo that may carry them through their entire school career. Their mental juices of novelty have been carefully stowed away in some hidden cerebral crevice that may one day be coaxed to the surface when the trauma of high school has become a memory. Professor Neff gave me an A. I imagined he had also lived under the cold drizzle of disapproval in high school. The following summer, I took a close-up photography term project from Photo Illustration 1 to Amphoto, a publisher of photographic books in New York City. The CEO, Ron Engel, a rangy 38-year-old trying to act older than his years, was interested. Thinking he may have discovered the next shining star in the sky of famous photographers, he decided to take a risk. I went to his office a couple more times and, glory be, signed a contract. I was going to be a published author at 19. With a sense of urgency and importance, I returned to RIT for my second year and started the serious work of turning a term project into a book. Not wanting the distractions of dorm living, I moved into a furnished ground floor apartment in an old 3-story colonial 5 miles from campus, and there, seated at a scruffy dining room table, absorbed myself in creating a fully illustrated how-to photography book.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Comments, observations, questions? This is kind of a preamble, a start. So we'll see how it goes.
I have kind of a mundane question to some degree.
Sure.
I'd like to ask you and Mother Sangeeta this. People say like when JFK was assassinated and Martin Luther King, and like, it was a really big deal in American history. As growing up, what was it like for you? Do you remember where it was and what happened with you and Mother Sangeeta?
Yeah, I was in 3rd grade. So what was that, 8 years old? but I remember it like it was yesterday. I think everybody remembers where they were and how old they were and what happened the day that John Kennedy died, right? I mean, they wheeled a TV into your classroom and everybody doubled up in the classrooms and watched it on TV, and it was a big thing. Not as much with Martin Luther King, but when John Kennedy was shot, oh my God, it was like the whole country went into mourning. It was big. So you must have been, if I was in third grade, you're like 4 years older, Vishnu, right? 3 years older? I don't know. What grade were you?
I was in 7th grade.
Yeah, Vamana Dave too. Yeah.
They announced it over the loudspeaker of the school. It was a Friday. It was raining where I lived. And my mother came and picked me up and my sister up. And my mother was crying because she was a Kennedy file. But for the next several days, it was they were just looking at the funeral. And then Lee Harvey Oswald was shot right there on in front of the TV cameras, and it became really, really ridiculous. So
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah, we all watched that live on the news. They were transferring him from one jail to the other, and then he got shot. Yeah, it was crazy time.
Martin Luther King, then Robert Kennedy, all of them, one after another. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. The whole country stood still. It was a terrible time.
Not that much different than the coronavirus, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he wasn't even such a pious guy, Kennedy, John Kennedy. Either
No.
was Bobby Kennedy. They were very impious men, but somehow the country loved him. They just absolutely loved him. So everybody went into mourning. My mother was crying for days and days too. Everybody was. Yeah.
I think that's how I felt on September 11th. It just, it was very unreal on that day.
Yes.
Yeah, like everybody will remember where they were that morning, and it's the same kind of thing. These pivotal moments in history.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sure. Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindam
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thanks for the Brahm Samhita.
Thank you.
Chintamani prakara sadma sukalpa vriksha.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Oh, is anybody going to write an offering to Srila Prabhupada for the Vyas Puja, which is August 12th?
Yes, Prabhu.
I know that Sangita wrote one already. Mother Sangita. Anyway, just a thought.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.